What is going on, everyone? The football therapist here, bringing you my early 2021 QB rankings. Let's get to it. Now, before we begin, I just want to let you guys know I'm not going to be going as in-depth with these players as I would be in an individual player video. However, I'll be giving you a little bit of an overview of my players, an overview of my tiers, and then I will be breaking them down further in individual players throughout this offseason. As you guys see, we got tier 1 with Mahomes, Murray, and Allen, tier 2 with Jackson, Prescott, Watson, Rodgers, Herbert, and Wilson, and then tier 3 has Burrow, Brady, and Hurts. Question marks there because I don't know if he'll be starting. And then that tier 3 does extend to win. And let's talk about this first tier of quarterbacks. These are the guys to me that are the safest players going into 2021 and the extreme elite players for fantasy football that'll give you top 3 to 5 value every single week. Mahomes, there's not really much to say about him. The guy is just elite with his passing ability. He has playmakers. He's in a perfect situation. He's going to continue to be the top overall ranked player, even though he may not finish there. If you're a QB early type of guy, Mahomes is the type of player to go after because he's basically ensuring you a top 5 to 10 floor every single week. Now the next two guys, Kyler Murray and Josh Allen, are my 2 and 3 going into the 2021 season and safely into tier 1 due to that elite rushing upside plus their ability to pass with their weapons on the outside. So Kyler Murray, he had 11 rushing touchdowns last year. Josh Allen, he had 8 rushing touchdowns last year. Both of these guys don't really have set running backs going into 2021 that you look at and say this guy is going to explode at the running back position. So they're going to always have value in the run game. They also both excelled in the passing game due to the weapons that their teams picked up in the offseason. We saw Josh Allen with Stephon Diggs really boost the guy's development. He had an awesome year, almost MVP type year. And then Kyler Murray was consistent for most of the season with DeAndre Hopkins. That offense was fast moving, they were fast paced, and he really elevated his game. Now, the difference between 2 and 3 is really small, but the difference between tiers is where I think it's going to be a little bit more interesting. So what is the difference between the tiers? Well, to me, I think it has to do more with security than anything. I really value those top 3 guys safely as top 3 to 5 overall quarterbacks every single week, but I feel like there's a lot more risk for some of these tier 2 guys. Now, it's not the type of risk where I'm going to say these guys are going to fall out of the QB1 area altogether, but I think that some of these guys could be a little bit more riskier based on any given week. And a lot of these guys have different risks going into the 2021 season. Let's start with the first guy, Lamar Jackson. He has that huge rushing upside, so I'm a huge fan of that. I always think that he's going to have a relatively elevated floor based on the scheme. But again, he needs to improve as a passer, and he needs to get some more weapons. Now, while I can't predict what they're going to do for him on the outside, I do think that Lamar is going to rebound nicely going into 2021. He has a really solid running back behind him in J.K. Dobbins, and I think the duo can really do some damage on the ground. Now, if you told me I was being too high on Lamar Jackson and you wanted to argue that Lamar Jackson should be lowered to 7 or 8, I really wouldn't hate that. Because again, within the tiers, I value the players more similarly than the players outside of the tiers. So if you wanted to tell me Lamar Jackson should be down to 7th or 8th, I could definitely see that. For now, I'm going to keep him at 4 and we'll see how the offseason progresses. Dak Prescott was on a roll last season. He has a ton of elite weapons. That offense is built to pass. But again, there's that ankle injury. I think that Dak Prescott could be a sneaky value next year. I think people are going to be a little bit lower on him, and he could potentially be that sleeper who gets drafted more into that QB 8 to 10 range, like Josh Allen was going last year, and he could potentially go into that top 1 to 3 value. But again, with that injury, I'm a little bit more hesitant putting him up a little more, so I'm going to keep him at 5 for now. Deshaun Watson, to me, out of this group, is the most talented quarterback. He's shown an elite playmaking ability, but again, his current situation in Houston is in question. They don't really have much going for him around him, so I'm going to put him at 6 right now, and hopefully his situation can improve to where I could potentially raise him a little bit, or if he goes to a rougher situation, maybe I'll lower him within this tier. Aaron Rodgers' situation is really good right now. He has the best wide receiver in the league in Davante Adams. He's going to be going into another questionable year with the player makers around him a little bit. I mean, Aaron Jones is going to be a free agent. Will they bring in some more weapons? What will they do on the outside? I think MVS and Allen Lazard could be good secondary options, potentially, if they continue to develop. But again, I still see Aaron Rodgers being a safe option for the fantasy football world, yet he doesn't have that high of an upside, in my opinion, compared to some of the guys above him going into 2021. Now, Justin Herbert has all the upside in the world. He completely balled out once he got on the field last year. I think that as a rookie quarterback, it was one of the more successful rookie seasons I've seen in a long time. But he has to do it with another coaching staff going into year 2. Keenan Allen is getting a little bit older. Hunter Henry is a free agent. So while I am optimistic about him, I'd like to see what happens during the offseason. And I think that 8 right now, with some of these guys above him, I think I'd be a little bit more confident with those guys above him. So 8 is a really good spot in my opinion. And then Russell Wilson, I talked a lot about him in my latest video. He's going to be the last QB in this tier. He's elite in my opinion in terms of playmaking, but he's really inconsistent. We've seen it from last year, the year before. He goes from being the QB1 last year in the first half of the year to the QB12 in the second half of the year, and the QB2 in 2019, and then QB16 in the second half of the year. He's just too risky for me, so I'll put him at the lowest part of this. So when we're looking at my tier 3, these are guys who I find to be a little bit more riskier than the guys in tier 2 and tier 1, or have limited upside. Joe Burrow is the first. He has a ton of risk going into 2021 because we don't know how he'll return coming off an ACL injury. Some quarterbacks, some players, they struggle coming off that type of injury. Going into year 2 with such a limited sample from Joe Burrow makes him a big risk. But he also has a ton of upside. I mean, when he was on the field, a couple of those games, he was balling out, he was moving the ball downfield, he was building a chemistry with T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. I'm going to be breaking down Joe Burrow in my next video, so keep an eye on that out for that. But to me, this guy has the highest ceiling of any quarterback going into 2021, but he has the most risk in my opinion. Now, Brady is kind of the opposite. He has a relatively safe floor in my opinion, as long as the weapons return. He's going to move the ball downfield in this Tampa Bay offense. Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, Antonio Brown, even if he returns, will help this guy move the ball and give you relatively safe fantasy points around that low-end QB1 range almost every single week. What he doesn't have is that high ceiling play anymore. Due to his lack of rushing, his mobility issues, he's not going to give you any rushing upside. You're basically banking on the passing game. That isn't what the modern NFL is. Even Patrick Mahomes, he'll give you a couple points on the ground every single game. Aaron Rodgers potentially, Justin Herbert. So he's not going to have that top 5 ceiling in my opinion. But if you're looking for a safe option in the later rounds, I think Tom Brady could be that. Now lastly, Jalen Hurts is the real wild card here. I put him on the screen because if he starts, I love this guy going into 2021. And that's because, again, he has that elevated rushing upside. While he may not be the most polished passer, he could give you 50 to 100 yards a game, a passing touchdown, a rushing touchdown here, potentially 2 on the ground. And he's the guy that you work your scheme around to make the whole offense better. I think he could be a Lamar Jackson-esque type player, and I think he's a little bit more polished as a passer. Now again, he's super risky. We don't know if he's starting, so he may not even make this list come regular season. But for now, I'm going to have him finishing off my top 12. Comment below who you think is too high, too low, and let me know what you think going into the 2021 season about the quarterback.